Hey there. Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 186 is titled An Interview with Amanda Lowry. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Flute 360 podcast interview. Before I introduce my lovely guest, I want to briefly introduce this amazing festival. So, Ron Royer and I are co-hosting a flute festival, and it is going down February 2022. It is a co-hosted event where the SBO and Flute 360 are coming together and putting on this wonderful flute festival. It's going to highlight performers and winners of the video proposal, in addition to highlighting works by women composers. So I cannot wait to promote this event, and this series is an inspiration for such campaign. But in addition, I get to make new friends along the way, and that includes my wonderful guest for today, and her name is Amanda Lowry. She is associated with the ACWC. She's a phenomenal composer, flutist, educator, improviser, sound designer, and arts administrator. She wears a lot of hats. So without further ado, help me welcome Amanda to the show.
Hi.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. How are things in Canada?
Well, we are back to doing things in person again, which is really lovely. I'm actually a graduate student right now at the University of Toronto. So last year things were all online, which was a little bit challenging, but it's really nice to be back playing music with people in person again.
Oh, good. Yes. So I did read through your biography that you are currently a DMA student.
Mhm.
What year are you in right now?
I'm in my third year.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, almost there.
Yeah. So how was the second year being virtual?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly it had its frustrations, particularly teaching online, because, when you're in the room with someone, you can really hear their sound, whereas if it's over Zoom, it's like, well, is that you or is that the microphone, and just helping students out with things like rhythm is really hard to do when there's latency and lag to worry about. So yeah, there were definitely some challenges, but I think also, being home all the time certainly made it a little easier to do a lot more reading and research and things like that and get more into my own creative practice. And I've been working on recording an album. So yeah, there it had its ups and downs, but I'm definitely happy that the rest of my degree is going to be hopefully in person.
Yeah, my heart really went out to students because I graduated in 2018, and the DMA program is very intense, and I cannot imagine like going through ensembles and rehearsals and like chamber rehearsals, and how do you organize that, and how do you navigate such a virtual world with a pandemic going on around you?
Yeah, I feel especially bad for undergrads, especially those who went into their first year last year because my first year undergrad was just such a kind of eye-opening experience for me and, all the people that I met and just being kind of dropped into this world of like playing all the time and playing all in all different ensembles and things like that. And I feel like as a graduate student, I've kind of done that, and I still miss it, of course, but or have missed it. But yeah, I really really feel bad for those first year undergrads who are have moved to a new city for the first time. They don't know anyone, and they've just had to be so isolated for the last year. So
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And my heart went out also to my middle schoolers and my high schoolers too.
Mhm.
That's such a weird season in your life anyways. And
Yeah.
being their teacher, and just seeing them try to navigate this new world, my heart really ached for them. So it's been a tough few years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Things are looking
But
up though.
yeah, but things are looking up. And going back to the introduction, you do a lot. And not only are you juggling these different hats, but you just said, I'm currently a third-year DMA student. How do you find time for it all? How do you prioritize, and how do you juggle it?
It's very hard. And I don't know if I would say that I'm particularly good at balancing things. I definitely, uh, have had a tendency in my life to, overachieve and
Yeah.
overcommit, and I'm trying to move away from that a bit. I think that was actually one of the things that was really good for me in the pandemic, because my
Mm.
calendar just like cleared all of a sudden, and I had this
Mm.
experience of just, having all of this time. And you don't really realize how like burnt out you are until that happens, until you have the space to reflect. And it's tough because I love all of the things that I do, and every time I think about, you know, uh, letting go of something, taking something off my plate, it's just like, "Oh, but I can't let go of that thing because
Mm.
I just can't imagine not doing that," you know? So, I think my main strategy is I try to be hyper organized, a lot of to-do lists and schedules and things like that. But also like not as much as possible trying not to multitask,
Mm.
which I might sound a little weird given my bio, but just to sort of like chunk things off and say like, this week or this month or even this year, like this is the thing that I'm focusing on. So for example,
Mm.
right now, because I'm doing my DMA in performance, even though I'm still a composer and I will still write music from time to time, that's not my focus. That's not the thing that I'm kind of putting all of my energy towards. I'm mostly putting things towards my flute playing and learning repertoire. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, it does feel like I'm being pulled in different directions all the time, but I try to manage that as much as I can by just blocking things off a little bit so I can wear one hat at a time at least.
Yeah, for sure. And what I'm hearing is that you are honing in on this idea of batching, wearing
Mhm.
that one hat for quite some time and saying, okay, right now I am going to wear that educator hat as long as I can. So that way you're not being pulled in several different directions.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
try to
and
do the
sometimes
same.
it's not possible just
Yeah.
because you have to, deal with other people's schedules too, but
Yeah.
as much as I can control it. Sorry, you were saying you do the same thing?
I try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I love lists, I love reminders, and I have to be extremely organized, else I will feel like a chicken with its head cut off, you know? And my friends will look at my emails with like everything being color coded and my reminders, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you are so OCD." Yeah. Um, but I'm like, "No, actually, if I'm not like this, I will be a hot mess."
Yeah. I noticed that the first time I got an email from you, I was like, "Ah, this is a kindred spirit. This person probably does a lot and knows how to stay organized." So
Oh, you're very sweet. Oh, shoot. So, circling back to your composer hat, you are affiliated with the Association of Canadian Women Composers, or ACWC, for the listeners out there who may not know. When did your collaboration with the organization begin, and what's that process like?
Unfortunately, that's actually a bit of a sad story in my case, because a dear friend of mine who was a member of the association, Rebecca Cummings, and a wonderful composer, she passed away a few years ago. And so it was actually at her memorial service that I met Carol Ann Weaver, who is the outgoing chair of the ACWC. She's been chair, I think, for like 6 or 8 years or something like that. And so I met her there, and we ended up catching a ride home together with a mutual friend. and chatting a lot, and she kind of twisted my arm into coming to an ACWC concert that was happening in the next couple of weeks. And then when I saw her there, she twisted my arm further into joining. And I'm so glad that she did, because I've met so many wonderful people through the organization, and I sort of went very quickly from being like newest member to being a board member. um, a lot of arm twisting was involved again, but they needed a treasurer, because the Janet Danielson, who'd been doing it for a number of years, was stepping down. And I have arts admin experience and background, and I like numbers. So yeah, I've been doing that for I think close to a year now,
Okay.
and also this year is the 40th anniversary for the ACWC. They were founded in 1981.
Mhm.
And so that celebration, it's been really great, but obviously the things that we had been planning a couple of years in advance, we had to do a lot of pivoting. Um, and there was actually a concert just last week, which is going to be live streamed in 3 days from now, on October 7th, which had been scheduled for right when the pandemic was started. So it got rescheduled, I think, about 4 or 5 times, and then finally we were able to record it without an audience last week. So yeah, and just to circle back to Rebecca, my friend, who indirectly is the reason that I joined the organization. She's actually written 2 flute pieces, both of which I commissioned. The first one was called Embryo for flute and electronics, and then the second one was called Fearless for flute, percussion, and electronics. And that one is actually on the concert that we recorded last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
And I am so sorry. My condolences to hearing about your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you are, so you've been with the ACWC for a year now, and not only is it, honing your skill sets because you said you like numbers, do you find that, when you work with a nonprofit organization that it's a great way to network?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, so actually, one of the things I was going to mention in conjunction with the anniversary, we are doing a project which is almost done now, of monthly playlists of members of the ACWC. So they're just uploaded onto SoundCloud, and I volunteered to curate these because it's sort of adjacent to my thesis research. So
Mhm.
it's kind of killing 2 birds with one stone there a little bit. But yeah, it's just been so wonderful to like get all these submissions from, there's over 100 members, and most of them have sent in their music for this playlist project. And yeah, I just feel like I have such a better understanding of like what's out there, who's out there writing music in Canada, which I didn't really have before, because unfortunately it
Yeah.
doesn't get played very much. It's not, there's still a
Yeah.
lot of music by dead white men being played more than anything. So, yeah, it's just been really nice to be able to engage with that a bit more.
Mhm. Yeah, or AKA the boys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear ya. So you mentioned that you commissioned the piece Embryo. What was
Mhm.
the inspiration behind that?
Behind the like what she wrote
Mhm.
for the commit. So I actually commissioned it like it was a student commission. So this was in my um technically 5th year undergrad, because I did a double major, so they wouldn't let me do it in 4 years, which is
Okay.
probably good.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and yeah, I was just working towards my performance recital, to cap off my undergraduate degree, and looking for repertoire. And I really love to play electroacoustic music in
Mhm.
particular. And Rebecca was a student there at the same time as me in the composition program, and I just loved her music, and I thought,
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah.
love for her to create something new for the flute. So that's why I asked her, and I,
Mm.
I loved what she came up with, and had a few opportunities to play it since then, and I hope to find more. I hope other people will play it as well. I think actually Laurel Swindon might be playing it for the festival in February. Yeah, and hopefully it'll continue to find its way to other flute players. And then the second one, Fearless, was actually kind of a similar situation. I was doing a chamber music diploma in 2017, 2018. And again, flute, percussion, and electronics, there wasn't really much out there that I could find by women.
Mm,
I'm really committed to playing music by women. I think that's really important, and I think that things aren't really going to change until people kind of on an individual level start to make change. And Playing gender balanced programs is a good way to start with that at the very least. So I was looking. I had a flute percussion duo already, and we were looking for repertoire. And I suggested Rebecca
mm,
because she was continuing to create incredible music.
mm.
She did not disappoint. She wrote a really amazing piece.
Nice. Yes, I couldn't agree more with, promoting both and making sure both genders are seen.
Hmm.
Um, so in the second piece, it sounded like you really wanted a specific instrumentation to be
Hmm.
heard, right? And you noticed a void and you said, "Hey, there's not a lot out here within this niche. Let's fill it." That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that's something that I'm trying to like promote in a bird's eye view of notice, through my podcast, like, hey guys, like if you want to get involved, you have to network. What we're
Hmm.
talking about, collaboration, building those relationships, and notice what's not been done. Notice the
Hmm.
void and
Hmm.
fill it because then you are unique and you stand out among the noise because I don't know how many times can we hear the old the older compositions of, French works by flute and piano. I mean, it's
Hmm.
gorgeous, it's beautiful, but let's start, filling those voids.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not just what's not out there, but also what is out there but is not being heard, you know? My first DMA recital that I'm working towards right now um is going to be all flute music by Canadian women who are no longer living, who kind of lived like in the 20th century for the most part. So I think the range of works is from about maybe 1930 up to 1980, more or less, because I think it's really important that we know our history a little bit more. So much of what I do is playing music that's just been written, like premiering new works, or written in the last 10 to 20 years, and I love that, and I'll never stop doing that. But I also think that there's this gap, because like especially with composers who are no longer living, they aren't around to promote their music anymore,
Mm,
so no one else is going to do it. And so I think that's really important. And also just like in terms of the accessibility to teachers and to students and to performers, like a young student flutist isn't going to pick up a piece, like where there's no recording of it anywhere. They want to have
mhm.
heard it, they want to know something about it. Like that's a very brave thing to do, I think, to play something that you don't have any kind of reference for. And I wouldn't expect a young flutist to necessarily be able to do that. So I'm kind of trying to make it my mission to record a lot of these pieces that are wonderful, but like they haven't been played, since 1950. And
Mhm.
there's nothing, like one of the pieces, the only available recording is a cassette tape that somebody uploaded to YouTube, and it was like of the premiere performance in 1956 or something like that. So the quality is obviously not great, and yeah, I really want to get more of that out there and have it be available to people.
Yes, very well said. I love it. So, in addition to being a composer, you are also an improviser. How has improvisation helped you, if at all, with your standard performances?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think it's helped me a lot with my composing, for sure.
Okay. Okay.
I think I use improvisation to compose a lot of the time, and then so just kind of generate a lot of ideas and then go back and take what I like and leave the rest.
Mm.
Um, I think as a performer, So, because I do play so much contemporary music, there is actually often room for improvisation in a lot of newer works, and I love when that becomes available, and even in the sort of performer composer collaborative process, which I love so much to be a part of. So again, going back to Rebecca and Fearless, when she was writing that, she actually met with me and the percussionist I was working with, and had us improvise
Mm.
together and separately, and just recorded the sounds that we made, and she gave some directions, and through some of her own ideas in, but those improvisations ended up being a part of the electronics, which then informed how the live part was written. So
Mm.
um yeah, in a sort of roundabout way, I guess, that's really affected things. And I think in sort of, I guess, the more traditional part of my performance, I think I'm just a freer player, a more relaxed, comfortable player when I improvise, and I've
Mm.
just in the last few years been able to um uh to yeah, to translate that into my playing of fully written, fully composed music,
Mm.
to be a little more free and a little more relaxed in my playing.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And my connection, I don't improvise maybe as often as I should, but I feel like my practice of improv actually comes through podcasting because I can
Yeah.
have an idea of the dialogue, I can do research on my guests, and every every talk something else comes up and there's an ebb and flow and you have to be willing to go there and you may not know where that conversation is going to lead, but being comfortable in your own skin and your voice and your ideas that you would like to express, you got to go for it. And so I feel
Mhm.
like when I pick up my flute, I'm just more comfortable because on the stage, like, again, you can prepare, you can practice the recitals program, but things come up. You hear crickets in the background, or a baby's crying, or maybe the pianist goes a little bit faster or slower, and you have to adjust. And so I couldn't agree more with the sentiment of I'm I'm more free on this stage when I improvise.
Mhm.
So I was just kind of curious to tap and to kind of pick your brain on that subject.
I think I just thought of another thing actually. My favorite way to improvise is with other people. Improvising on my own, I'll do it,
Mm,
but there's something so special about the energy that another player can bring to an improvisation,
mm.
and the way that you can kind of feed off of each other, and just bounce things back and forth. And I think that's another thing, that ability to connect and to really not just listen, but e- have that, like, energetic support, I guess,
Mhm.
is a thing that in chamber music, we all aspire to. And I feel like doing that in an improvisation setting has helped me to be able to do that more in more traditional chamber music settings.
Yes, exactly. And kind of, going back to this idea of finding the parallels between like podcasting and being on stage. Of the 100 guests that I've had on my show, everybody has a unique personality. Everybody has a very unique energy. And tapping into, I mean, for example, like right now, you have such a sweet, kind, gentle energy. And how crazy, I mean, I can still be Heidi, right? But how crazy would it be if I just came on being like extremely loud and boomy and
That
do you know what I
would
mean?
be
Like,
very stressful for me.
woo. Yeah, and I don't want that, you know? That's counterintuitive. So, yeah, I mean, you just I'm still myself as an individual and I'm still myself as a host. But then for me to like match your energy for it to like flow and for us to have a really good time and for you to be comfortable, I think you have to read the room.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that, because so I first got into improvisation in my second year of undergrad, and it was because there was an improv ensemble at Laurier where I studied, and they were doing auditions, and I I have this thing where when I'm, like, really afraid of a thing, I just do it because I just I feel like that's an important part of personal growth is just to, like, face your fears.
Mm.
Um, and so I just decided, okay, like, I'm never gonna get in. I've never done this before, but I'll just do the audition and then I'll, know what that's like. And I was talking, before, the audition with an older student who had been part of the improv ensemble for quite some time and was kinda known, in the faculty as, like, one of the top improvisers. Like, she was really good. And, just telling her that I was nervous and some of my worries, and she said, "Well, like," but I said, "I've never improvised before," and she said, "You're improvising right now." And that was really kinda eye-opening to me that, like, yeah, we're always improvising all the time, just having a conversation, whether it's
Yeah.
on a podcast or just, like, every day.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I checked out before our talk your YouTube video where you improvised with a dancer.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me how that went down?
So yeah, that was Tanya Williams. She's a physical theater artist as well as a contact improv dancer and teacher of contact improv. And this was another situation. So I was working in an arts admin role for a theater company called Empty Space in Kitchener Waterloo. And Tanya is an artistic associate there. And I had seen her do this contact improv dance thing, and I just thought it was so cool. But like, I don't dance. I don't like, people looking at me when I'm moving. Like, being on stage with a flute is fine, but like, yeah, I would never have wanted someone to watch me move that way.
Mm.
Um, and she had invited me to come to like a contact improv jam, just like an informal session. And it was like, well, this is terrifying, so I should do it. So I did, and actually met my partner there. So that was a good
Mm.
decision.
Wow.
um, and yeah, and I ended up going back like a bunch of times and really loving it. It was very freeing. Um, and then Tanya and I so there was a collaboration between Composers Collective that I was part of at the time, and Tanya's sort of contact improv collective that she's part of, where we did yeah, like a combination of our compositions and improvisations with dance.
Mm.
And Tanya and I decided to just try and
Mm.
see like what would happen if if I played and danced with her at the same time. And there was a lot of stuff to figure out because obviously, the first time we tried it, she did something where she like got between my arms and pulled my flute away from my face, which makes playing hard. So there is a learning process there, and obviously making sure that the instrument is safe.
Mm.
And because I don't have the use of my hands for support of my body, making sure and she's very very conscious about people's safety and not becoming injured. Because there's a lot of lifts, like a lot of weight transfer from one person to another. So
Mm.
um, you want to be really stable and careful about how you're doing that sort of thing. So yeah, we've actually done it a few times in different contexts, and it always feels a little bit different. And I think what we were talking about before about that energy transfer of, two people talking or two people dancing or playing music together, it's really interesting how in that way, it's actually transferring from one like discipline or medium into another. So like the way that she is moving,
Mm.
and the way that she's sort of using her body with mine for movement informs what I'm playing,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
I love that. Yes. Before I was a flutist, I actually was a ballerina. And
Oh,
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And so a lot of the things, like even how I approach, flute and like practicing just in my little, studio and the relationship to my body in the stand and what I want to convey through a phrase, right? I find that a lot of my dance background really helps like
Hmm.
me to portray a musical line or, thinking about the facial expressions and the body language. Like I think us as performers, we need, to really bring that music off the page. And how do we do that? Well, we have a lot of tools that we can use, like I just said, facial expressions, body gestures, using more of the space on the stage rather than just the little, like, I don't know, 4 by 4 with your body and the space between you and the stand, but
Mhm.
understanding the space around us, it can be
Yes.
very dynamic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Have you ever done any, performance that, like, used ballet and flute playing at the same time? Like, where you were dancing?
Yes, I've actually have not been the dancer and the performer, but I
Okay.
have done pieces where I'm the flutist and there is a dancer on stage. But that does bring up a good point. Like when you were talking about your work previously, I was thinking, ooh, I've collaborated with dancers, but I actually have not been both the player and the dancer. That would be interesting.
I think that would be really amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, as a solo piece, but also, like, if you had dancers with you, and
Hmm.
you were dancing as well, that could be really interesting.
Yeah. The last one that I did it was a while ago, but I played Syrinx and then I hired a contemporary dancer. So it was not traditional by any means. I mean, she was doing very contemporary moves and I absolutely loved it. It was done in Louisiana. And then I did another production out of one of my classes actually through the DMA program with Dr. Heather Warren Crow. And it was based off of her book. I forget the title of it. It was like Girl Plastic something, but I'm putting my foot in my mouth. And so anyways, anyways, I had choreographed a work where 4 dancers were conveying basically the message of the piece, and I was one of the dancers, and there was art in the background and, things like that, but I do love being in my body. It really helps me to feel creatively fulfilled and a great way to express myself.
Well, if you ever
Yeah.
decide that you wanna commission a piece for ballet dancing flutists, I know someone who would be perfect to write that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
her name's, Julia Mermelstein. You might actually be interviewing her at some point because she's the incoming chair for ACWC.
Very good
And
segue.
she, she's done, a lot of work for, like, music with dance. That's sort of her thing.
Okay.
Um, she also wrote me a piece, called Sunder, which is, for flute, piano, and electronics, and, it doesn't have dance in it, but there's some movement involved, so there's a point at which the flutist has to walk very, very slowly from one side of the stage to the other, and it's so interesting to me just, like, how challenging something like that is, like, how do you kind of maintain the mood of you could there's lots of ways to do it badly. You could just walk across the stage, you could, have very sudden or uncoordinated movements. So, like, yeah, I actually had to, like, really choreograph and rehearse, like, how do I which way do I turn? How slowly do I turn? What part of my body do I turn first? And, you
Mm.
know, so anyway, she's someone who I think thinks a lot about movement in her writing and has written, at least one really fantastic flute work, so I expect she could do another one.
Nice. Thanks for that referral. I love it. Something you said that was very interesting, it reminded me of an Eleanor Roosevelt quote, and that is do one thing every day that scares you. You've said that, I think, at least 2 times within our conversation. Do
I don't think I
you
manage to do it every day. That would be a
Okay.
lot.
I
Maybe
don't
every
blame
few
you.
months at least.
Yeah. Is there an inspiration behind that? Like, I have an idea, but I do not want to assume because assumption can be dangerous. Um, but it sounds like you thrive off of that. Or I
I
or
think so.
yeah, okay. Is that fair to say?
I think that, like, yeah, just not necessarily doing something that scares me, but challenge. Like, I can't imagine a life without challenge. I just think that would be really boring and
Yeah.
unfulfilling.
Yeah.
So, whether it's just like playing a piece that feels like it's too difficult for me and figuring out how to do it,
Mhm.
or going to a contact improv dance session and, like, letting my body touch strangers
Yeah.
and dancing, like, that's yeah. So, and I don't necessarily do these things thinking, okay, this is going to become, like, part of my career or like a really important thing that I keep doing all the time. But yeah, I think that it's really healthy,
Yeah.
and good for personal growth and fulfillment and all of these things to kinda look at those things that feel really scary and give yourself the chance to discover that actually, like, if you go dance in front of people, you're not gonna die, like, it's not gonna kill you. It
Yeah.
might feel uncomfortable for a bit, but, afterwards, everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. No, that is a really healthy practice. I love it. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is because it's so easy to stay within our comfort zone, you know.
Mhm.
But I think, especially from this perspective of being an educator, and when we ask our students, like, play off the page and see how loud you can get and connect
Yeah.
with people. And to them, that could be really scary. And I think if we as educators can showcase, like, and be able to communicate this to students and say, I know it's scary, right? I totally get it. Well, are you saying that from an experience that you had like 20 years ago? Or are you still living a new day
Mhm.
with new experiences and you feel like a student again. Because when you're
Yeah.
in that space of vulnerability, then you can easily, at least for me, I think this could be true for a lot of people, then you can easily go to said person and say, yes, I just took an audition again. I know that feeling of butterflies in the stomach. Let me help you with your audition. And you can connect with them a little bit easier as you're coaching them.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I mean, I am a teacher and I love teaching, and this actually is not a thing I had thought about before, is how, like, this aspect of how I do my life, is, yeah, is, like, so relevant to teaching and how I can kind of bring that in. So thank you for pointing that out because you're absolutely right. Like, um playing music is all about taking risks, especially if you're doing it in front of someone or in front of a
Yeah.
lot of people, and I think, students are already taking a lot of risks just by going to school for music. That's a
Yeah.
risk in and of itself, but, yeah, just, like, reminding them about the importance of going outside of their comfort zone, even in something as simple as, like, play this louder or play it with more expression or,
Mhm.
anything like that.
Yeah. No, I love this conversation. So, do you intentionally say, okay, this week I'm going to do some skydiving?
Oh, I would love to go skydiving. I haven't done that
Ooh.
yet, but,
Ooh.
yeah, I hear it's quite expensive. Um, I think I don't know if it's like I'm not actively, like, seeking out things.
Yeah.
I feel like there's enough opportunities for doing things that are scary that just kinda, like, show up, like being asked to be on a podcast, for
Mm.
example. That, it's more just, like, a matter of saying yes, and I
Okay.
think when I have the instinct to say no to something, I really try to take the time to interrogate why. Like, is it because I just don't wanna do this, like, it doesn't sound fun, it doesn't I don't see the value in it, or is it because I'm scared and it
Okay.
makes me uncomfortable? And, um, anytime that I realize that it's because I'm scared and it makes me uncomfortable, then I sort of say to myself, "Well, then you should just do it because you'll live, it'll be fine."
Yeah.
Skydiving, you'll
Mm.
probably live, but
Okay.
it's a different kind of risk, I guess. I do
Hopefully.
really wanna I'm not afraid of heights, I like
Oh.
heights.
Oh, I'm
Um
terrified of heights.
I like
Oh.
heights and I like space and I really wanna know what it's like. I mean, I'll never, have enough money to go to space, but, I'd
Yeah.
really like to know what that, like, weightlessness feels like, so
Okay.
I feel like skydiving is a opportunity to find out.
Don't they have, like, capsules, or I'm gonna totally sound crazy right now, but
There's,
don't
like,
they
these
have?
air yeah, like, these rooms with, like, really high volume air
Yeah,
that you can float
that
in.
recreate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Now, if
so.
someone could write a piece for skydiving flutist, that would be cool.
Calling for commissions, anyone who's
Yeah,
listening to this.
I wonder, like, with the air pressure, how that would affect the sound. You'd have to get a
Ooh,
really cheap flute to do this. I wouldn't wanna use my
yeah,
my
and
regular everyday
kind
flute.
of a quirky, fun, but real shout out, maybe you need, like, a wind defender. Have you
Yeah.
seen those things that snap on to the head joint?
Yes, I have,
Yeah,
for when you're playing outside,
yeah.
which I try not to do very much. I had a bad experience with mosquitoes one time, so
Yeah. Oh no.
always
Are
always pack bug spray if you're gonna be playing outside. That's a very important lesson that I learned.
Do you know a good mosquito repellent is
Um,
actually tea tree oil?
Tea tree oil. Okay.
Yeah, you just put a little bit with a carrier oil, like coconut oil,
Okay.
and you just rub it like on your ankles or back of your neck, wherever the mosquitoes try to, bite you,
Yeah.
and it repels them.
It would have to be a really good mosquito repellent because they like me a lot. I don't know
Okay.
why.
Well, try tea tree oil, and I
Okay.
pray that you don't get bit up really bad.
I will try that. Although I think we're out of mosquito season now, thankfully,
Okay.
for a little while at least.
Next summer.
Next summer, yeah.
Next summer. Oh, I love it. Cool. So we have talked a lot about different topics, various topics, and I love it. It was completely comfortable for me. I love picking your brain. Hopefully, it was comfortable for you because you said, ooh, podcasting. So,
I'm an introvert.
okay.
Yeah.
But no, like the reason why I was really picking your brain about, stepping outside of your comfort zone is because I just find myself in this space of trying to mentor people to do that
Mhm.
and starting that dialogue and figuring out a really fun, encouraging, loving way to help people cross, that threshold. And a lot of times, I mean, because for me, I thrive off of new experiences. I
Mm.
thrive off of building new relationships, making each day its own unique day, just because I am more fearful of the monotony of going about life and being like, okay, 9 to 5, come home, watch the news, go to bed. I mean, that scares me to the umpteenth degree. And so, not that I'm perfect, there's a lot of things that I turn down because I am afraid. But when I hear people come to me and I coach people, I think, oh, just do it. But I know sometimes it's not that simple. Do you know? And so that's why
Yeah.
I was kind of like curious to get inside of your head and that headspace of yours just to see your approach.
Yeah, I think um I think I was already sort of doing things this way before I read this book, but so there's a book by Brene Brown called Daring Greatly. So she's a psychologist and researcher, and she studies vulnerability and shame.
Mm.
And there's a TED Talk out there and some other online resources. But yeah, the whole book is basically about that, like just doing things that scare you and how that will make your life better. That's
Mm.
that's like such a terrible oversimplification of what the book is about. But if it is like, when you just read something and you're like, this is going to change my life. And also, I need to buy like 20 copies of it and just like hand them out to everyone that I care about.
Mm.
It was very much that for me. So if you have some students who are really struggling with
Mm.
getting outside their comfort zone, I feel like that would be a good thing to throw at them.
Yes, what a great recommendation. So, because we did cover a lot, I don't want to pull the rug out from underneath your feet and say, and we're done, because I know how that could feel. Are there any last sentiments that you would like to leave the listener with?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Yeah. It is very general, so I apologize
Yeah.
for being too broad.
um Well, at risk of, beating a dead horse, play music by women. That's
Mm.
yeah, I just want more people to play music by women because it's 2021.
Yeah.
We've been having these conversations for a very long time, and there's so much good music out there
Mm.
that's just not getting played. And every time I look at a concert program and I just see all men, it feels like just such a shame.
Yeah.
So, and I know that there are barriers and challenges, and but I think the more people do it, the easier it gets.
True.
Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And to kind of wrap up that sentiment, this is a great way to end our conversation. If you want to hear more compositions by female composers, check out February's 2022 festival, with the SBO and Flute 360. It is going down through the SBO's YouTube channel. You get to hear phenomenal performers of these female compositions or compositions by female composers, and we cannot wait to see you there. So thank you, Amanda, for your time, talents, and expertise. I am so thrilled that we got to meet, and I love making new music friends. So thank you.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening to today's content. If you wouldn't mind sharing this episode or another episode through the Flute 360 podcast with one of your music friends, I would be so appreciative. Thank you. Let's talk about flute.